Hello. So what we're going to do in this video is we have now got our Bitemark image enhanced and we've made some overlays of our suspect dentition. So now we need to get our overlays onto our Bitemark photographs so that we can start doing comparison. Before we do that, again, here's my disclaimer that I'm not teaching you how to do the actual analysis and comparison. I'm simply teaching the Photoshop skills and steps that you can utilize while doing the analysis and comparison. So, what we want is we want to make sure we've got our Bitemark photograph open. And so, again, you need to know which photograph you're using, why you're using it, what things it's usable for. I'm not teaching any of that. I'm just simply teaching you how to do the Photoshop side of things. So we're going to say that this is the image that we've selected of our Bitemark. And again, as I've said in previous videos, I just pulled this off of Google. I don't know anything about it, don't know where it came from. It's just simply the example I'm going to use for this. So, okay, we've got our image, and now we need to have our suspect cast also pulled up where we can see them. So you're going to open that file in Photoshop. You can either go to File, Open. You'll see that, here's my Bitemark case. If you'll remember, my working file is here. That's where all of my Photoshop files are. And let's just start with suspect G. So we're going to open that up. And you'll notice that I've kind of cleaned this up from doing our videos earlier, but I have, if I turn my blockout on, I have a hollow overlay, I have a trace contour overlay, and then I have just a solid teeth overlay. Again, if you wanted to see those without the background, there you have it. So now what we're trying to do is we're trying to get these three different types of overlays onto our image to make some comparisons. And the first thing that you have to do is you have to make sure that the resolution of your image and the resolution of your cast are the same. Most of the time we're going to have wanted our casts to have been scanned in 300 dpi, which I believe that these were. And the way that you can check that is go up here to image, image size, and right here is what you're looking at. You're looking at the resolution. It says 300. Great. You don't really want to change the resolution of your cast. So now we're going to come over here to our photograph and image, image size, and our resolution is the same. That's what you want. If your resolutions are not the same, when you drag your overlays over, chances are those teeth will be either way too big or way too small, and they won't line up on the photograph correctly. If your resolutions are not the same, how you change that is you want to change the image resolution, and you would just type in here whatever resolution you need it to be to match your cast. If you do change this resolution, you do need to double check your sizing and make sure that things are still sized appropriately. Sometimes changing the resolution can change your sizing a little bit, so just double check that. And if you need to resize it, resize it. I did a video on how to do that. You can watch that if that does need to happen. But we've checked our resolutions. Everything's good. They're both the same. So now what we want to do is we want to get both of these pulled up where we can see them at the same time. So the way that we do that is we come up here to Window, Arrange, and we're going to say 2 up vertical. And so now you can see that we've got our Bitemark on the left and our suspect cast on the right. Now, when you're doing this, you need to be paying attention to what is currently active. So you'll notice this is a lighter gray, this is a darker gray. The lighter gray means that this is the image that is active. And all of these layers over here go with this image. If I click on my cast, you'll now notice that That's now light gray, so this is what's active, and these are the layers that go with this image. So again, make sure you're aware of what you're clicking on, what's active, what's not, that sort of thing. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to basically drag these over here. And the way that we do that is, let's start with our solid because it's easier to see. You want to highlight and turn on the overlay that you want to move. So I've got this active, got it turned on. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use our rectangular marquee tool. And we want to draw a box around the portion of our overlay that we want to move. Right now I'm just going to move the top arch. Once you've got your marquee selected and you have your marching ants, you're going to come back over here to the move tool. Now we're going to grab this and we're going to drag and drop. So you will now notice that we have our solid overlay on our picture. And what you need to notice is that just defaulted to layer 1. You want to go ahead and double click that and rename it. This is G solid. So that's what I'm going to call it. And I'm actually going to call it G maxillary solid because it's the maxillary arch. And we're going to just say okay to that. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to get our mandibular one over there. So again, we've activated this picture. We've got our solid still activated because that's what we're working on. We're going to come back to our marquee tool. We're going to highlight our mandibular arch, grab our move tool, and then drag and drop. Okay, notice again, defaulted to layer 1. We're going to double click and rename it. This is our G mandibular solid. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to do that exact same thing with our trace contour. So we want to turn the eyeball on the trace contour so we can see it. We want to make sure that layer is active by clicking on that. And it's the same process. So we're going to do our rectangular marquee tool. We're going to select our maxillary trace contour. We're going to grab our move tool, and then we're going to drag and drop. Again, notice that it just named it layer 1, so make sure that you come in here and rename it whatever you need to rename it to. Okay, and now we want to do the same thing with our mandibular arch. Again, eyeball is still on, trace contour layer is still active. Going to do our rectangular marquee tool. Going to draw our marquee, go back to our move tool, and then drag and drop. Okay, I am now going to double click that, name that mandibular trace contour. Okay, we've got one more we want to move over, and that is our hollow. So again, turn the eyeball on, activate that layer. You'll notice that I still actually have my marquee box down here. That's fine. We can go ahead and use that. We've got our move tool. Now we're just going to drag and drop that. And again, rename it G mandibular hollow. We're going to come back over here to our casts, go back to our marquee tool. We're going to select our maxillary arch, go to move, and drag that over. And once again, we're going to double click and rename it. Okay. You can come back over here to your cast photograph, and basically we don't need this anymore. We've moved our overlays over. There's nothing else we need to do to it. You can do Control D to deselect it, and you can actually just close out of it, save the changes. I'm just going to say yes, even though we really didn't make any changes, but that's just to make sure things stay the same as we want them. Now that gets this back up to my big screen. And what we want to do next is we want to try to get all of these overlays on top of each other. And then I'll kind of show you a little bit of a trick. and then show you kind of how to align these once they're all on top of each other. So I really just want to work with the maxillary ones. So I actually am going to turn off all of my eyeballs for everything except for, let's just start with the maxillary solid and hollow. And I actually want to just turn off literally everything except for those two things, because I want to make sure that all I'm seeing are those two so that I can get these lined up right. Okay, what I'm going to do is I want to move my hollow, so make sure that that's the active layer, onto my solid overlay. So we've got our move tool, and I'm going to try to grab this overlay. And now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to line up that hollow overlay to where I think it matches up on the teeth. And I'm going to make that a little bit bigger by using Control Plus just so I can see it. And looking at that, it looks like that's lined up pretty well. So I'm going to do the exact same thing with my maxillary trace contour. So I'm going to actually turn the eyeball off of my hollow. I'm going to turn the eyeball onto my trace contour. Even though I've turned the eyeball on, that's not the active layer because I haven't clicked on it yet. So I'm going to click on it. It's now the active layer. I've got my move tool. So now I'm going to grab my trace contour, and I'm going to kind of just move it around until I've gotten it to where I think that that's lined up right. And ta-da! Now if I want to turn my eyeballs on all three and just kind of see how everything is, things are kind of all lined up. Now, this is just a little trick that I do that makes, again, your life a little bit easier, because we've now just taken the time to get these all lined up. And if we don't do this next step, basically, I'll show you. Let's say I move my solid. Notice that neither of my other two moved. Well, it would be nice if I could just move all three at one time, right? Everybody agrees that would be lovely. Well, you can. And the way that you do that is you link these layers together. So how do we do that? We are going to hold down the control button, and I think it's control for a PC. I believe it's command for a Mac. And then we're going to click on these three maxillary overlay layers. And then we're going to right click, and we're going to say link layers. Notice now there's a little chain link next to those three layers. And what that means is even if I'm only working with this maxillary solid, I'm actually going to be able to move the other two. If I move one, it moves the other two because they're linked. And you'll see why that's nice here in just a minute. Same thing, and even if the eyeball isn't on, so let's say the eyeball's off of those other two, I'm moving my solid around. Notice if I turn my eyeballs on the hollows and the trace contour, they moved along with the solid. So again, that makes things really nice. Once you get everything moved over and lined up, just go ahead and link those so that everything stays on top of each other and lined up the way you want to with your overlay. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with our mandibular. So let's just start with our trace contour. Again, make sure the trace contour is the active layer because that's the one you want to be moving around. I guess you don't have to move your trace contour, but it's easier to move your trace contour onto your solid. Again, I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger so that I can kind of see that just a little bit better. Okay, we say that's lined up pretty well. We're going to do the same thing with our hollow. Again, make sure that you click on that layer so it's the active layer before you start moving anything. And this one is a little bit weird because it's probably been rotated. But we're gonna act like that's where we want it to be. Okay, again, now if we turn the eyeball off that, turn that on. Again, everything's good and lined up, right? Again, act like that's lined up. You'll see it better in a different video that it's a little bit more lined up. We want to, again, link these three layers. So hold your control button for a PC and click on the three layers you want to link. Right click, link layers. Now you'll notice I can move, literally try to move any of those layers, and all three of them will move. Again, let's say we're just trying to move our hollow. I can move that all around, and then notice when I turn the eyeballs on, all the other two have moved with it. So again, once you get your overlays into here, you want to link them after you've gotten them lined up so that if you move one, it moves all three, and you're not just constantly wasting time trying to reline things up. Okay, so now whoa, goodness, we need to zoom back out, don't we? I'm actually going to work with the maxillary arch and show you kind of just the other thing that you need to do, or how to do the other thing you will need to be doing. And let's just look at our maxillary solid. So you will notice that if I'm trying to put this over these teeth, my teeth kind of block my mark. So we actually want to make our solid a little bit opaque. And the way that we do that is we come up here to the opacity. Again, you want to make sure your solid layer is the one that is active. And now you can sit here and you can kind of toggle this to give you a little bit of a see-through effect. And you will notice that actually does not change your opacity of your hollow ones because you're not active on those layers. So you don't have to worry about that messing up your hollows. As long as you're clicked on just the solid and changing the opacity of just that solid layer, you'll be okay. So then if you remember back to our mechanism, we said that this mark was for number, whoops, and you'll see I just accidentally moved that. This mark was for number 11. This mark is for number 6. So we want to try to maybe line up these teeth on that mark. So I'm going to put that right there. The next thing that I want to do is I may want to rotate this a little bit just to, again, you're trying to line teeth up with the mark on teeth that you know made those marks. And the way that we do kind of a rotation is you again pick one of these that's you want to work with. I'm going to work with my solid. You come up here to edit and you say free transform. Now we've got this lovely little box around it and we've got a little target here. So what this target does is it lets us change our axis of rotation. So if we leave it in the center and come out here to the corner, see how I've got kind of that circular arrow, and then I can drag and it rotates. It's going to rotate this around that target. So because it's in the center of the screen, we're rotating around the center of that box. Let's say I want to rotate around this canine. I just left click on my mouse and drag that target to the tip of the canine. Now you can see that it's rotating around the tip of that canine. And again, you will need to be able to do this to kind of get your overlays, trying to line it up with the mark, that sort of thing. So that's how you change your axis of rotation and you rotate your overlays. Let's say, okay, I don't really like how that looked. Again, we think that teeth number 8 and 9 made those marks. So I'm going to put my teeth over the 8 and 9 mark. I'm going to drag my center of rotation to there. And now it's rotating around tooth number 9. Again, this is all just stuff that you're going to be doing to compare your suspect teeth to your bite mark pattern. Once you think you've rotated this how you want to, if you just hit your move tool, it takes your little box away. And again, just to show you how the linking thing works, you'll notice that it moved those other two hollow volumes, even though the only thing we were looking at was the solid at the time we were doing all of that. So, okay. The last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what it kind of looks like with two different suspect overlays in here. So we did suspect G, let's do suspect H. So you can either go up to file open. I actually just already have my file open down here. So I'm just going to double click, and that will, again, pull up my suspect cast. I want to make sure, we already know my picture is in 300. Let's just double check. This is in 300, so we're good to go. You'll notice that I have my hollow, I have my solid, and I have my trace contour. Okay, so we're going to do the exact same thing that we just did with suspect G with suspect H. We're going to window, arrange, tile 2 up vertical. And let's actually shrink that back down to where I can see the whole thing. And okay, we need to start dragging and dropping. I'm going to do this kind of quick since I've already walked you through how to do that on the other slide. But again, it's just your marquee tool, selecting what you want to move, then your move tool, drag and drop, and rename. This is H Max Solid. And we're going to do that. Let's just do the maxillary arch here just to save some time. Again, I've already got my marquee tool around what I want to have my selection to be, so I'm just going to drag and drop and rename that H Trace Contour, at H Max Trace Contour. And then we're going to come back over here. Oh, I'm sorry, that was hollow, not trace contour. So H hollow. And last one is our trace contour. So again, make sure that's the active layer. My box is still around what I want my box to be around. So I'm just going to drag and drop. And now this one is my H Max Trace Contour. Okay. Again, I'm not going to move the mandibular over because it would be the exact same process. I'm just saving time. We're going to close out of that. We're going to say yes to save. It would be a good idea, since I haven't been doing this, but anytime you drag an overlay over, I would tell you to just go ahead and file, save. Again, that's just saving your work with each big step that you're doing. That way, if something happens, you don't have to go back and re-drag all these overlays over. Okay. Again, we need to get our overlays lined up with each other. So I'm going to turn my Max Trace Contour off. I'm going to come down here and make my hollow the active layer. I'm going to make things a little bit bigger, and then I'm just going to drag my hollow and get it lined up with where I think it's supposed to be lined up. All right, that's not quite there. Here we go. That looks a little bit better. Okay, we've got our hollow lined up. Let's get our trace contour lined up. Again, make sure you're in the active layer. We're going to drag that. And that looks like that's where that's supposed to be. Now notice things are pretty well lined up. We want to link these layers. So Control, click the 3 layers you want to link. Right click and select Link Layers. Again, what that now does is it moves all 3 if you move 1. Okay. So let's kind of show you why we did our different suspects in different colors. Well, let's say we want to look at essentially suspect H and suspect G at the same time. Now you will see that we can tell which suspect we're looking at because there's different, undo that, because there's different colors. So that just makes things really nice when you're doing the comparison if your hollow overlays are in different colors for different suspects. So again, I showed you how to do the different colors in the other video when making the overlays. So, but this is now just kind of showing you why you want those to be in different colors. So, okay, I've shown you how to drag the overlays from the cast file into the photograph. I've shown you how to line up your overlays for each suspect and link them. And I've shown you how to do the free transform to rotate your overlays on the Bitemark. So you would just simply repeat the process for however many different suspects you have. And then it's up to you to start kind of doing what you need to do in terms of lining up those overlays onto the bite mark to see how many of the suspects you can exclude. And all right, so there you have it. That's getting the overlays into the bite mark.